They called it sacred, a gift from the gods whispered through temple smoke that curled toward heaven like prayers made visible. A doorway to the divine, wielded by prophets, shamans, and sages who understood its deeper purpose beyond mere sensation or escape. But somewhere in the march of modernity, something profound was lost. The rituals faded into memory like ancient songs no one remembers how to sing. The reverence dissolved into recreation, transforming what was once liturgy into lifestyle. What was once a sacred portal became a casual pastime, packaged in dispensaries with neon signs and marketed with the same energy as fast food. We legalized the plant but forgot its soul, commercialized the form but abandoned the essence. Today we ask surface questions: indica or sativa? THC or CBD? What strain will make me feel good? But no one dares ask the deeper truth. What does this ancient teacher do to the human spirit? What portals does it open, and what walks through them? Because cannabis doesn't just relax the body or calm the mind, it opens something far more mysterious within us. It touches the subtle realms where consciousness meets the unknown, where the ego meets its own reflection, where the seeker meets what they're truly seeking. Before rolling papers and parking lot sessions, before legalization and cultural rebranding, before cannabis became a meme or a political statement, there was fire and leaf, and someone brave enough to bring them together for the first time. That first flame kissed the plant in some forgotten moment of history, and from their sacred union rose something extraordinary, not mere smoke, but presence itself, not intoxication, but invitation, not escape from reality, but entrance into its hidden chambers. The ancients didn't seek to get high in our modern sense. They sought entrance. Entrance into the hidden chambers of consciousness, into dialogue with the divine, into the very marrow of existence where truth lives unadorned by human interpretation. To them, cannabis wasn't entertainment or medication or social lubricant. It was a sacred technology, a key that could unlock doors in the mind that remained forever sealed to ordinary consciousness, revealing landscapes of the soul that could only be mapped through direct experience. But here's what they knew that we've forgotten. Every portal opens both ways. When you peer into the mystery peers back into you. What emerges depends entirely on what you bring to the threshold, your intentions, your preparation, your willingness to face what arises. They understood that cannabis doesn't create visions. It hands you a mirror. And mirrors, by their very nature, don't flatter or deceive. They reflect with brutal honesty what stands before them, revealing not just light but shadow, not just peace but the chaos we've buried beneath layers of distraction. This is why the same plant that brings one person ecstatic laughter brings another paralyzing tears. Why some float in cosmic bliss while others sink into existential paranoia. Why the same strain, the same dose, the same setting can produce radically different experiences in different people. The plant itself remains neutral, a mirror reflecting back the contents of your inner landscape. It doesn't discriminate between worthy and unworthy users, between pure and impure intentions. It simply amplifies what's already there, turning up the volume on your existing frequency. Ancient mystics knew this truth intimately. They didn't approach cannabis casually or use it to escape the difficulties of existence. They prepared through fasting, prayer, and deep introspection because they understood they were about to meet themselves without filters, without the comfortable masks of daily life. Cannabis doesn't amplify what isn't already there. It simply reveals what was hidden, brings to the surface what was submerged, forces into consciousness what the ego has worked so hard to keep buried in the basement of the psyche. This is the plant's greatest gift and its most challenging aspect. It forces us to confront what we've been avoiding. In our culture of constant distraction, endless stimulation, and perpetual avoidance of depth, this kind of raw self-encounter can feel overwhelming. even terrifying. The racing thoughts, the sudden awareness of mortality, the flood of emotions that seem to come from nowhere. These aren't side effects. They're revelations. The plant isn't malfunctioning. It's working exactly as it's supposed to, showing you what you brought to the altar. In ancient India, the Vedas spoke of cannabis as one of 5 sacred plants, a divine gift carrying amrita, the nectar of immortality. But it was never consumed carelessly, never taken lightly, never approached without profound reverence and preparation. Sadhus, the wandering mystics who renounced material life to seek union with the divine, approach cannabis with the reverence of handling fire itself. Their hair matted like the roots of the earth, their bodies smeared in holy ash, their minds pointed only inward toward the source. Their relationship with cannabis isn't one of indulgence, but of ego annihilation. Through long meditations in mountain caves or temple steps, they use the plant not to escape themselves, but to burn away the layers of false identity that obscure their true nature. Each puff becomes a funeral pyre for the ego, each exhale a letting go of attachments to name, form, and the illusion of separateness. They chant Bom Bole while smoke curls across their foreheads like sacred script, invoking Shiva, the cosmic destroyer whose dance dissolves illusion to reveal truth. But even within these traditions, warnings echo through the centuries. Some gurus cautioned that cannabis misused doesn't dissolve the ego, but inflates it. Without proper preparation, fasting, meditation, surrender, the plant becomes a spiritual trap rather than a doorway to liberation. Swami Sivananda, one of the great modern saints, warned against relying on any substance for spiritual growth. God is not in the smoke, but in the stillness behind the eyes. The plant can point toward truth, but it cannot replace the slow, patient work of inner purification. In ancient China, Taoist alchemists understood cannabis as a mirror herb, one that reflects rather than creates, amplifies rather than generates. They combined it with ginseng and other sacred substances, but only after years of internal cultivation and energy balancing. These masters knew that cannabis amplifies whatever qi, life force, already flows through the user. If your energy is harmonious and grounded, rooted in stillness and balanced through discipline, the plant can enhance perception, deepen meditation, and even extend life. But if your qi is scattered or chaotic, fragmented by trauma or destabilized by modern living, cannabis will fragment it further. Like striking a cracked bell, it will vibrate with whatever note is already there. Beautiful if the instrument is tuned, cacophonous if it's broken. They warned that using the plant without proper preparation was like tuning an instrument too tightly. Eventually, something breaks. The body must first become a stable vessel, the mind a still pool, the spirit a grounded flame before it can safely contain expanded consciousness. This wisdom speaks directly to our modern predicament. We often approach cannabis when we're stressed, anxious, or seeking escape, precisely when our energy is most unbalanced. The plant then amplifies that chaos, leaving us more scattered than before, wondering why the medicine made us feel worse. The Taoists understood that cannabis works with the law of resonance. Whatever frequency you're vibrating at, the plant will amplify. If you bring peace, it expands. If you bring fear, it intensifies. If you bring confusion, it multiplies until the noise becomes unbearable. In certain branches of Islamic mysticism, hashish served as a veil remover, a sacrament for piercing the illusion of separation from the divine. Sufi mystics sought fana, the annihilation of the ego in the presence of Allah, the dissolution of the false self in the ocean of divine love. In the dim glow of lantern-lit gatherings, dervishes would chant the names of God, inhale deeply, and spin into themselves, seeking obliteration not in the body, but in the boundaries of the separate self. For them, the plant was a bridge, a rope lowered into the abyss of the soul. But even these ecstatic seekers proceeded with caution. Rumi, the beloved poet-mystic, offered a crucial warning wrapped in silk. Why seek God in drunkenness if he already dances sober within you? He wasn't condemning the plant, but illuminating the danger of spiritual shortcuts. The mystics understood that not all who entered the doorway returned with wisdom. Some became lost in the experience itself, mistaking the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. They knew that ecstasy without grounding becomes just another trick of the ego, another form of spiritual materialism. This is why authentic Sufi practice always included community, ritual, and guidance. The circle held the individual as they dissolved, ensuring they could return integrated rather than scattered, transformed rather than simply transported. They knew that the real test wasn't how high you could fly, but how gently you could land, how you carried the insights back into ordinary life, how the experience changed not just your perception, but your character. Today, we've inherited the plant, but abandoned the wisdom. We've performed spiritual extractivism, taking the outer form while discarding the inner purpose, keeping the tool while forgetting its proper use. Cannabis has been stripped of its cultural DNA and repackaged as lifestyle rather than liturgy. We light joints while scrolling phones, consuming cannabis in states of distraction rather than presence. We've removed the preparation, the ritual, the community guidance that once held space for transformation. The result is a generation surrounded by sacred tools but starving for sacred context. The old cultures knew a plant isn't sacred because it feels good. It's sacred because it connects you to the mystery. And the mystery doesn't entertain. It tests. But tests require readiness, ritual structure, elder guidance, and the humility to know you're entering something larger than yourself. We've democratized access to the plant, while abandoning the wisdom traditions that made that access meaningful. It's like giving someone a key without telling them what door it opens, how to walk through safely, or what they might encounter on the other side. The dispensaries sell the cannabis but not the ceremony. The internet provides the information but not the initiation. We have access to the plant, but not to the lineages that understood its true nature, leaving us to navigate profound, altered states with nothing but our own confused desires as guides. Carl Jung taught that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Cannabis often forces exactly this kind of radical self-acceptance by dissolving the barriers between conscious and unconscious mind, between the persona we present and the shadow we hide. When the filters fall away, everything we've buried rises to the surface. Repressed trauma, unacknowledged desires, the parts of ourselves we've exiled to the basement of our psyche because they seemed too dangerous, too embarrassing, too difficult to integrate into our carefully curated self-image. This isn't punishment. It's invitation, an opportunity to reclaim our wholeness, to meet the parts of ourselves we've never learned to embrace. The anxiety, the paranoia, the sudden flood of emotion aren't malfunctions but revelations, messages from the depths of the soul. But without proper preparation and integration practices, this shadow encounter can overwhelm rather than heal. We feel exposed, vulnerable, sometimes paranoid, not because the plant is dangerous, but because we're meeting parts of ourselves we've never learned to love. The indigenous shamans understood this process intimately. They expected the darkness before the light, calling difficult experiences la limpieza, the cleansing. They knew that healing often looks like breakdown before it resembles breakthrough, that the soul must vomit its poison before it can receive its medicine. In their worldview, there's no such thing as a bad trip. Only difficult medicine, challenging initiations, sacred encounters with aspects of self that demand attention. The question isn't how to avoid the difficult experiences, but how to meet them with courage and wisdom. Perhaps the greatest trap cannabis presents is the illusion of instant enlightenment. The plant can offer profound glimpses of cosmic consciousness, divine love, and universal connection that feel more real and significant than ordinary waking consciousness. But glimpses aren't the same as embodiment. Peak experiences aren't the same as permanent transformation. The mistake many users make is confusing the intensity of the experience for its spiritual significance, the emotional charge for inner work, the temporary expansion for lasting growth. Many users mistake cannabis insights for wisdom, downloads for development, feelings for facts. They confuse poetic language for ethical transformation, cosmic visions for character development. They download profound insights that change nothing about how they treat their family, their community, or themselves. True spiritual growth isn't measured by the altitude of your visions, but by the aftermath of your actions. Does the peace remain when you're stuck in traffic? Does the love extend to those who trigger you? Does the wisdom translate into daily choices that serve something greater than your own comfort? The spiritual ego loves cannabis because it provides an endless supply of meaningful feeling experiences that require no real change, no difficult work, no genuine surrender. It can feel like you're evolving while actually remaining completely stuck in the same patterns. Without integration practices, reflection, journaling, lifestyle changes, ongoing spiritual discipline, even the most profound cannabis experiences become spiritual entertainment rather than transformation, cosmic tourism rather than genuine pilgrimage. There's a kind of spirituality that sedates rather than awakens, that provides the feeling of growth without the friction of actual change. Cannabis, when misused, can become the perfect tool for this kind of spiritual bypassing. Users speak of connecting with the divine while remaining disconnected from their own emotions. They talk about cosmic consciousness while avoiding the difficult work of healing their relationships. They chase transcendent experiences while refusing to engage with the mundane work of character development. The plant offers the user a choice: use me to run deeper into yourself, or use me to run further away. Both feel spiritual. Both can be wrapped in beautiful language and mystical concepts, but only one leads to genuine transformation. True spiritual practice doesn't always feel good. It often involves facing what we'd rather avoid, feeling what we've been numbing, and taking responsibility for patterns we've been blaming on others. Cannabis can either support this work or help us avoid it entirely. The false light of spiritual bypassing appears as wisdom, but functions as avoidance, looks like depth, but remains shallow, feels like growth, but produces no real change. It's particularly seductive because it allows the ego to maintain its sense of superiority while avoiding the humility required for genuine transformation. The answer isn't to abandon cannabis, but to remember how to approach it with reverence. This means creating sacred space, even if that's just a single candle in a quiet room, a moment of silence before lighting up, an intention set with genuine care. It means preparing through silence, fasting, or meditation before consuming. It means treating the plant as you would treat a wise elder, with respect, attention, and the understanding that you're entering into relationship with something that has its own intelligence and purpose. Most importantly, it means bringing clear intention rather than vague hope for good feelings. Ask yourself, am I using this plant to escape or to explore? To run from myself or to meet myself more fully? To avoid difficult emotions or to process them more deeply? Sacred use requires community and guidance, whether through established traditions or conscious circles of seekers. The ego is too cunning, too skilled at self-deception to navigate these waters alone. We need mirrors in the form of others to help us see clearly. This doesn't mean every cannabis use must be a formal ceremony. But it does mean approaching the plant with the recognition that you're working with a teacher, not just consuming a substance. It means understanding that consciousness is sacred and deserves to be treated accordingly. After the smoke clears, the real work begins. Integration isn't about maintaining the high or chasing the next experience, but about embodying whatever wisdom emerged from the journey. This is where genuine transformation occurs, not in the cosmic download, but in the daily discipline of living differently. Integration might mean having difficult conversations you've been avoiding. It might mean changing lifestyle patterns that no longer serve. It might mean confronting addictions, healing relationships, or pursuing purposes that align with what the plant revealed about your deeper nature. The plant can show you the mountain, but you must still climb it. It can reveal the path, but you must walk it with your own feet. It can open the door, but you must choose to walk through and then live differently on the other side. This is where true spiritual maturity develops, not in the peak experience, but in how you integrate those insights into the valleys of ordinary life. Not in what you see when your consciousness is altered, but in how you behave when it returns to baseline. Many users have profound cannabis experiences that they describe as life-changing, but then their life doesn't actually change. They return to the same patterns, the same relationships, the same unconscious habits, as if nothing happened. This is where the real work begins. Creating a sacred relationship with cannabis requires the same discipline as any spiritual practice. It means setting aside time for integration, creating rituals that honor the plant's teaching function, and developing the inner stability to receive whatever arises. This might involve keeping a journal to track insights and patterns. It might mean establishing regular periods of abstinence to ensure you're not becoming dependent on the plant for access to deeper states. It might mean finding teachers or community members who can help you navigate challenging experiences. Sacred practice also means developing the discernment to know when not to use cannabis. There are times when the psyche is too fragile, when life circumstances require clear thinking, when the most spiritual choice is to remain grounded in ordinary consciousness. The plant doesn't demand constant use. In fact, the wisest practitioners often use it sparingly, treating it as a special occasion rather than a daily habit. They understand that integration requires time, that wisdom needs space to settle, that constant expansion without consolidation leads to spiritual indigestion. Building sacred practice also means learning to access expanded states without substances, through meditation, breathwork, movement, or other practices that develop your natural capacity for altered consciousness. The goal isn't dependence, but graduation. Perhaps the most advanced practice with cannabis is knowing when not to use it. This requires developing the kind of inner sensitivity that can distinguish between ego desire for escape and genuine spiritual calling for expansion. The ego loves cannabis because it provides relief from the discomfort of being human. It offers temporary escape from anxiety, depression, boredom, and the general difficulty of existence. But this isn't the plant's highest function. It's actually a misuse of its sacred nature. True sacred use often involves discomfort. The discomfort of facing shadow material, of questioning cherished beliefs, of feeling emotions we've been avoiding. The ego will try to steer the experience away from difficulty toward pleasure, but this defeats the plant's teaching function. Developing restraint means learning to sit with difficult emotions without reaching for cannabis as a numbing agent. It means finding other ways to access peace, creativity, and connection that don't depend on altering your brain chemistry. This doesn't mean never using cannabis for relaxation or pleasure. It means not confusing those uses with spiritual practice. There's nothing wrong with recreational use, but it's important to be honest about what you're doing and why. As cannabis becomes increasingly legal and socially accepted, we have an opportunity to reclaim its sacred dimension without losing its accessibility. This requires education not just about dosing and effects, but about the plant's spiritual history and proper ceremonial use. We need modern elders who understand both the ancient wisdom and contemporary contexts, who can guide seekers safely through the territories cannabis opens. We need communities of practice where people can explore the plant's depths with proper support and guidance. We need to remember that legalization was never just about the right to get high. It was about reclaiming our relationship with plant teachers that have been companions to human consciousness for millennia. Cannabis is part of our spiritual heritage, and treating it merely as a commercial product dishonors that legacy. The future of sacred cannabis lies not in returning to ancient forms, but in creating new containers that honor the plant's essential nature while serving contemporary needs. This means developing modern rituals, contemporary guidance systems, and integration practices suited to our current moment. We stand at a crossroads between two ways of being with this ancient teacher. One path leads back to the sacred, to ritual, reverence, and real transformation. The other continues down the road of recreational consumption, spiritual bypassing, and missed opportunities for genuine growth. The plant itself remains neutral, a mirror waiting to reflect whatever consciousness approaches it. But the choice of how we engage lies entirely in our hands. We can continue treating it as a commodity, or we can remember its true nature as a sacred ally in the ancient human quest for meaning, healing, and transcendence. The cannabis plant has survived millennia, through prohibition and persecution, through worship and commodification. It's still here, still offering the same gifts it always has, if we're humble enough to receive them properly. The question isn't whether cannabis is sacred. The question is whether we're ready to be sacred enough to work with it consciously. Because in the end, the plant can only take us as deep as we're willing to go, and only as high as we're prepared to integrate when we come back down. Cannabis, when approached with proper reverence and preparation, can be a profound ally in human consciousness evolution. But it's only as sacred as the hands that hold it and the heart that receives it. The plant is still whispering to those who remember how to listen. It waits not for laws to change or societies to evolve, but for individuals to show up with the reverence it has always deserved. When you're ready to meet it not as a substance but as a teacher, not as entertainment but as sacrament, it will respond accordingly. The portal remains open. The question is whether you'll walk through with wisdom or simply peer through with curiosity. The difference determines not just your experience, but your transformation. The choice is yours, and the plant is waiting.